This is a lesson for Chapter 8, Section 8, titled Factor by Grouping. So what we'll end up seeing here is instead of just a trinomial, now we've got a four-term polynomial. So when we go ahead and factor, we're always looking for common factors. And I see the first three numbers have j's and they're all even, but the last one is not even and it does not have a j. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this trick, which is called, again, factor by grouping. We're going to group the first two terms and the last two terms. And we're going to pull out the common factor that each of them have. So I see the first terms, these first two terms have a common factor of 4j squared. So I'm going to pull that on the outside of a set of parentheses. I do the division, and I've got 2j plus 1 left over. 4j squared over 4j squared just makes 1. Now the whole idea, if we can factor this as two binomials, we will get the same binomial when we go ahead and factor out the common factor with this set of two-term binomials. And so what we'll pull out is a positive 5. So I'll put the positive 5 on the outside of a set of parentheses. Do the division, and I've got 2j plus 1. So see, I have the same common factor. So what we can do is we can divide this. We can divide this by 2j plus 1. And I'll divide this side by 2j plus 1 because these two terms, this is one term right here, and this is the other term. These two terms have a common factor of 2j plus 1. So I'm going to pull that on the outside of a set of parentheses and then do the reducing. And you see what's left here is a 4j squared. And then here I've got just 5 left over. And that's it. And so that's how that four-term polynomial ends up factoring. So it factors as two binomials. And again, if you multiplied this out, you'd come right back out to this four-term polynomial. So that's what we're going to do. Look for common factors. If we don't see any, we're going to go ahead and factor by grouping. So I take out the common factor of 5s squared in this case here. And so I've got 5s squared, and then inside the parentheses I've got 2s plus 5. And I go ahead and pull out the common factor here. I just see a 4, so I'll pull out a positive 4. Make sure you put the plus sign there, and plus 4 this time. And we've got 2s plus 5. So again, you see that we've got these two terms, and the common factor is the expression, that 2s plus 5. So 2s plus 5. And so I'll put that on the outside of a set of parentheses, the 2s plus 5. Make that look a little nicer here. So we'll go ahead and pull that 2s plus 5 on the outside of a set of parentheses and do the reducing, and you can see what's left over. So we're left with this 5s squared and then plus the positive 4. So a different type of problem. What's different about this one is, again, there's no common factors here, but what's different is we have a minus term. The third term's negative, so make sure you treat that as a negative term. So I just put the plus negative to remind me that that is a negative term there. And I look for the common factors. So I see 3x squared. That's what I'm going to pull on the outside of a set of parentheses. And I do the reducing, and I've got 7x plus 2 left over. And so I do the same thing with this one. Now, remember, I want to make a 7x plus 2, so I need to actually take out this time a negative 4. A negative 4, and that's going to end up giving me the same factor. So now I'll have 7x plus 2. And so now I'll go ahead and take out the common factors between these two terms. Again, that common factor is 7x plus 2. And what I've got left is that 7x plus 2. Again, that goes outside the parentheses. What goes inside is what's on the outside of the parentheses, which is the 3x squared minus the 4. So that is factoring by grouping, the general sense. Let's take a look at some more difficult problems here. So this one says factor completely. So the key on this is to look for common factors. And this time I do see some common factors. I see that 4 goes into each of these terms. So I'll divide everything by 4, and I've got 8x squared, or 8x to the third power, plus 2x squared, plus 12x, plus 3. And so now I'll go ahead and factor by grouping. So use a different color here and group the first two terms and the last two terms. And so I'll pull out the common factor. And so the common factor for the first two terms is 2x squared. Common factor for the last term is just 3. So what's left over? Well, I have that 4, and I've got the 2x squared And then I'll go ahead and do the reducing, and I've got 4x plus 1. And then the same thing over here, I pulled out a positive 3, so what's left over is the 4x plus 1. So I'll go ahead and take the two common factors between these two terms, the 4x plus 1, and I'll factor that out. And so I still have this 4 on the outside, but I also have a 4x plus 1. And when I go ahead and reduce that, that leaves me with that 2x squared plus 3. That would be the factored form there. So in the next one, same sort of thing. You're just looking for the common factor. I see a 2 goes into each of these, but then also this time a k. So I'm going to pull out a 2k from each of the terms. It just makes the factoring easier. You could do it without that, but you'd have to eventually factor it out if they say factor completely. So what I've got left is 16k to the third minus 8k squared plus 6k and then minus 3. So now I'll go ahead and take out the common factor between the terms that I've got left over. And I see that each of these two terms has a 4k squared that I can pull out. And then these two terms have a 3 that I can pull out from each of them. So I still have that 2k on the outside. And when I go ahead and pull out the 4k squared, that leaves me with a 4k minus 2. And then on this one, I end up seeing a 3k or 2k. So I could have pulled out a little bit more. I didn't see the 8, so let's go ahead and fix that, because I saw I was doing something wrong, because when I have 4k minus 2, there's a common factor, but then also I don't get the same factors as what I have here. See, what I want here is a 2k minus 1. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull out an extra 2 here and combine that with this 4. So I'll have now 2k, and this is now 8k squared, and then I've got 2k minus 1. And now I'll be able to do the work, because in the other set of parentheses I also have that 2k minus 1. So now I can pull out that 2k minus 1. And what that'll leave me with is, for my answer, 2k. I still have that. I've got the 2k minus 1. And I also have the 8k squared and then a plus 3. So those are factoring complete. Let's take a look at the last set of directions. It says find the linear expressions for the possible dimensions of the rectangular prism. So we're looking for this side here. Maybe I'll call it, how about the length? Call that the length, and then this like the height and maybe the width. So I'm trying to find these different dimensions, possible dimensions from this volume here. So first thing I'm going to do is I see a common factor between all these terms. I see 3y goes into every single one of these terms. So I'm going to pull that on the outside, and once I've done that, I've got left over 8y to the second plus, and then 54, it makes 19y. 3 goes into 5 one time with 2 left over. Ouch, that should be an 18, I think. So let's check that. 3 goes in 18, yes. So let's change that number. So this is going to be 18y, and then minus 5. So now I have to factor this one more time, and it looks like a trinomial. So if it's going to factor, it's going to factor as two binomials. 5 and 1, I know those are the two numbers that multiply to make 5. Now, I know that the outside terms and inside terms need to subtract to make 18y. So I think I need to break the 8 down. I'm going to put a 4 here. So fix that. So I'll put a 4y here, and let's go ahead and put a 2y right here. See, that makes 20. Make that a positive and make this a negative 2. That'll work out. See, 20y minus 2y, yes, that does make 18y. So I know I have it now, so the dimensions would be 3y by 2y plus 5 by 4y minus 1. And I don't know what the units are, so I'm just going to put units off to the side of each of these, and then units here. So 3y by 2y plus 5 by 4y minus 1. So those are the types of problems you're going to see on tonight's homework. Good luck.